The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, turning the December streets into rivers of slush and misery. Maya Rodriguez pressed herself deeper into the narrow alcove between two brick buildings, pulling her threadbare coat tighter around her 17-year-old frame. The cardboard beneath her had long since given up any pretense of providing warmth or comfort, but it was all that stood between her and the unforgiving concrete. She watched the endless parade of umbrellas and hurried footsteps through the curtain of rain, each person wrapped in their own world of warmth and purpose. 6 months ago, she had been one of them, rushing to catch the school bus, worrying about geometry tests and whether Jake Morrison would ask her to winter formal. Now, those concerns seemed like they belonged to someone else entirely. A girl who had vanished the night her foster mother decided Maya was too much trouble and changed the locks. The social worker had promised to find her a new placement, but the system was overloaded, and 17 was practically aging out anyway. Maya had spent 2 weeks in a group home that felt more like a prison, where older kids stole from younger ones and the staff looked the other way. She'd chosen the streets instead, telling herself it was temporary, that she'd figure something out. That was 4 months ago. Her stomach clenched with hunger, a constant companion now. The soup kitchen didn't open until 5, still 3 hours away. Maya closed her eyes and tried to remember the feeling of being full, really full, not just the temporary satisfaction of whatever scraps she could find. She thought about her grandmother's kitchen in Mexico, before the cancer took her, before Maya had been thrust into the American foster system. Abuela Rosa used to make these incredible tamales at Christmas, the masa so perfectly seasoned, the meat tender enough to fall apart at first bite. A sharp clatter yanked her back to the present. Something metallic had fallen near her feet, bouncing once before settling against the wall. Maya blinked through the rain and saw a small, silver key lying in a puddle. She looked up to see a man in an expensive overcoat hurrying away, his phone pressed to his ear, completely oblivious to what he dropped. "Hey!" Maya called out, struggling to her feet. "You dropped something." But the man was already half a block away, swallowed by the crowd and the storm. Maya bent down and picked up the key, turning it over in her palm. It was heavier than she'd expected, with Sunset Storage etched along one side and the number 247 on the other. A storage unit key. For a moment, she considered running after the man, but he'd disappeared entirely. She slipped the key into her pocket, next to the few crumpled dollars that represented her entire fortune. Maybe she could return it to the storage facility tomorrow, when the rain stopped. If it ever stopped. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. Maya dozed fitfully, jerking awake whenever footsteps came too close, or the wind shifted the rain in her direction. By the time the soup kitchen opened, she was soaked to the bone and shivering uncontrollably. The warm broth felt like salvation, and the volunteer ladling it out, a kind-faced woman with silver hair, pressed an extra roll into Maya's hands when she thought no one was looking. "You stay warm out there, honey," the woman whispered. Maya wanted to tell her that staying warm was impossible, that she hadn't been truly warm in weeks, but she just nodded and managed to smile. The woman's kindness was almost harder to bear than indifference. It reminded her that somewhere in this cold city, people still cared about strangers. The thought made her throat tight with emotions she couldn't afford to feel. That night, huddled in a different doorway, because a security guard had chased her from the first, Maya fingered the key in her pocket. Sunset Storage. She'd passed it once, a sprawling complex of orange-painted buildings on the east side of town. What if the man never came back for whatever was in Unit 247? What if he'd forgotten about it entirely? The storage companies auctioned off abandoned units eventually, didn't they? She wasn't planning to steal anything. She told herself that as she drifted off to sleep. She was just curious, and if there was something useful in there, something the owner had clearly abandoned, well, Maya had learned that survival sometimes required bending the rules. The next morning dawned clear and brutally cold. Maya's breath formed clouds as she made her way across town, the key burning like a talisman in her pocket. Sunset Storage sat behind a chain-link fence, row upon row of identical orange doors stretching into the distance. A bored-looking teenager sat in the office, barely glancing up when Maya passed by the window. Unit 247 was in the back corner, tucked away from the main thoroughfare. Maya looked around carefully, making sure she was alone, then slipped the key into the lock. Her heart hammered as it turned smoothly, the mechanism clicking open with surprising ease. She grabbed the handle and rolled the door up just enough to slip inside, then quickly pulled it back down. Darkness enveloped her, thick and musty, with a smell of cardboard and old fabric. Maya fumbled for her phone's flashlight, the weak beam revealing a space packed floor to ceiling with boxes, furniture covered in sheets, and the accumulated detritus of someone's entire life. Her first thought was disappointment. This wasn't treasure, it was just junk. Old Christmas decorations spilled from a torn box near the door. A rocking chair sat draped in mothballs and memories. Maya picked her way deeper into the unit, her light dancing across photo albums and kitchen appliances, winter coats and children's toys. Then her beam fell on something that made her breath catch. In the back corner, partially hidden behind a rolled-up carpet, stood an old steamer trunk. Unlike everything else in the unit, it looked well-maintained, the brass fittings polished and gleaming. Maya approached it slowly, her pulse quickening. The trunk wasn't locked. She lifted the heavy lid and gasped. Money. Stacks and stacks of cash, bundled with rubber bands and organized by denomination. But that wasn't all. Beneath the money lay documents. Birth certificates, social security cards, and what looked like immigration papers. And at the very bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, was a photograph. Maya lifted it with trembling hands. The picture showed a young woman, maybe 25, holding a toddler with enormous dark eyes and a gap-toothed smile. The woman's face was beautiful, but tired, worry lines already etched around her eyes despite her youth. On the back, someone had written in careful cursive, Elena and Sofia Morales, 1995. Maya sank down beside the trunk, the photograph clutched in her hands. Elena. The name whispered through her memory like an echo. She had heard it before, somewhere in the tangled mess of her childhood memories. And that face? There was something familiar about it, something that made her chest ache with recognition she couldn't quite place. She picked up one of the documents, squinting at the faded typewriting. It was a death certificate dated 12 years ago. Elena Morales, age 32. Cause of death listed as complications from pneumonia. And below that, in the section for survivors, a single name. Sofia Morales, daughter, age 7. Maya's hands began to shake. She grabbed another document, Sofia's birth certificate. The father was listed as unknown, but the mother's maiden name made Maya's world tilt sideways. Elena Rodriguez. Rodriguez. Maya's grandmother had been a Rodriguez before marriage, part of a sprawling family that had scattered across 2 countries and dozens of cities. With shaking fingers, Maya pulled out her own identification, the worn card that had followed her through 7 different foster homes. Maya Elena Rodriguez. She'd always wondered about her middle name, why it felt so important even when everything else about her past seemed lost. The truth hit her like a physical blow. Elena wasn't just any young mother in a photograph. She was Maya's cousin, maybe an aunt, some branch of the family tree that had been pruned away by time and circumstance. And Sofia, Maya stared at the little girl in the picture, seeing her own eyes reflected back across the years. Sofia would be 19 now, just 2 years older than Maya. But where was she? Why was her mother's life packed away in a storage unit like forgotten treasures? Maya rifled through more documents, finding school records, medical bills, and finally, a letter that made her hands shake so violently she could barely read it. The letter was addressed to the future Sofia in Elena's careful handwriting. Maya's Spanish was rusty, but she could make out enough to understand. Elena had been sick, very sick, and knew she was dying. She'd put everything important in this trunk, Sofia's documents, the family photographs, and every dollar she'd managed to save working double shifts as a hotel maid. It was Sophia's inheritance, her safety net, hidden away until she was old enough to claim it. But something had gone wrong. Sophia had never come for her mother's treasures. The storage unit had been paid for automatically, the fees deducted from a bank account that Elena had established specifically for this purpose. Maya found the bank statements, tracking the slow decline of the account balance until it had finally reached zero just last month. The unit would have been auctioned off within days if Maya hadn't found the key. Maya sank to the floor, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she'd discovered. This wasn't just money. It was a family's entire legacy, a mother's love preserved in cardboard and brass, and somehow, impossibly, it was connected to her own lost history. She thought about the man who dropped the key. How had he gotten it? Was he connected to Sophia somehow, or just someone who'd bought it from the storage company? The question swirled through her mind, but one thing was crystal clear. This money didn't belong to her. It belonged to Sophia Morales, whoever and wherever she was. Maya carefully repacked the trunk, her mind racing. She had to find Sophia. But how did you track down someone who'd been lost in the system for over a decade? Someone who might not even know this inheritance existed? As she prepared to leave the storage unit, Maya's eye fell on something she'd missed before, a small address book tucked between two photo albums. She flipped through it, finding page after page of careful entries in Elena's handwriting. Names, addresses, phone numbers. A roadmap to the family Maya had never known she had. One entry made her heart skip. Rosa Rodriguez, San Antonio, Maya's abuela. Grandmother. Maya's grandmother. The address was different from the one Maya remembered, but the phone number might still be good. And if Rosa was still alive, she might know what had happened to Sophia. Maya memorized the number, then carefully locked the storage unit behind her. She walked back toward downtown with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in months. For the first time since she'd been thrown onto the streets, she had a mission that went beyond simple survival. The public library had computers, and Maya had become expert at claiming them during the less busy hours. She logged into social media, searching for any trace of Sophia Morales. The name was common enough that dozens of profiles came up, but none of the photos matched the little girl from Elena's trunk. Maya tried variations: Sophie Morales, Sophia Elena Morales, even Sophia Rodriguez, in case she'd taken a different family name. Hours passed. Maya's eyes burned from staring at the screen, but she kept searching, following digital breadcrumbs through friend lists and tagged photos. She tried calling the number for Rosa Rodriguez, but it had been disconnected. The address in San Antonio led to an apartment complex, but directory assistance had no current listing. Just as Maya was about to give up for the day, she found something. A grainy photo on a Phoenix nonprofit website, a group shot of volunteers at a homeless shelter. The caption read, "Local volunteers help serve Thanksgiving dinner," and there, third from the left, was a young woman whose eyes Maya would have recognized anywhere. Sophia Morales was listed as a volunteer coordinator at New Hope Shelter in Phoenix, Arizona. Maya stared at the photo, seeing her own stubborn chin and determined expression reflected in Sophia's face. The family resemblance was unmistakable once you knew to look for it. Maya's hands trembled as she wrote down the shelter's contact information. Phoenix was 800 miles away, but she had a lead. She had hope. For the first time in months, she had something more valuable than money. She had family. The next morning, Maya made a decision that would have seemed impossible just days before. She called New Hope Shelter from a payphone outside the library, her heart hammering as the phone rang. New Hope Shelter, this is Maria speaking. Hi. I'm looking for Sophia Morales. I understand she volunteers there? Sophia? Yes, she's wonderful. She's not in today, but I can take a message. Maya's throat went dry. Could you tell her that Maya Rodriguez called? Tell her it's about Elena Morales, and I found something that belongs to her family. Elena Morales? Sophia's mentioned that name before. Are you family? I think so, Maya whispered. I really think we are. Maria took Maya's contact information, the number for the payphone she'd be calling from, and a promise to check back in 2 hours. Maya spent those 120 minutes pacing the streets near the library, her mind spinning with possibilities and fears. What if Sophia didn't want to be found? What if she'd built a new life and didn't want reminders of the past? When Maya called back, Sophia was there. "Hello?" The voice was cautious, heavily accented, with the same mix of English and Spanish that colored Maya's own speech. "Sophia, this is Maya Rodriguez. I think we're family." "Maya Rodriguez? I had a cousin named Maya, but she disappeared into foster care years ago. I always wondered." "I'm 17, Maya said quickly. "My grandmother was Rosa Rodriguez, and my middle name is Elena. I've been in the system since I was 8. "Dios mío," Sophia breathed. "Maya, is it really you? I used to help my mom look for you online, but we never found anything." "The system, it's like a black hole sometimes." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "Sophia, I found your mother's storage unit. I have Elena's things, documents, photos, and," she hesitated, "and money. A lot of money that she saved for you." The silence stretched so long that Maya thought the connection had been lost. Finally, Sophia spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "My mother had a storage unit? When she died, the social worker said there was nothing. They told me she died with no assets, no will, nothing to pass on. I was just 12, and they didn't think I needed to know details." "She left you everything," Maya said. "Letters, photos, enough money to change everything. But Sophia, I need to tell you something else. I'm homeless. I've been living on the streets for months, and I found your mother's key by accident. I could have taken the money and disappeared, but it's not mine. It's yours." Another long pause. When Sophia spoke again, her voice was fierce with determination. "Where are you, Maya? What city?" "Chicago." "But Sophia, I can't afford to. Give me the address of that storage facility. I'm coming to get you." "But the money, the unit, will still be there when I arrive." "Maya, listen to me. My mother spent years looking for lost family after yours was taken into care. She never stopped believing that family was the most important thing in the world. Do you think I'm going to let my baby cousin freeze to death on the streets when I finally found her?" Maya broke down sobbing in the phone booth, months of suppressed emotion pouring out in great gasping waves. Through her tears, she managed to give Sophia the storage facility address and promised to check back the next day. "Maya," Sophia said softly, "I work at a homeless shelter here. I know how hard it is out there, but your nights on the street are over, okay? Whatever it takes. We're family now. Family doesn't let family face the world alone." The next 36 hours were the longest of Maya's life. She found herself checking the key compulsively, terrified it might disappear like everything else good that had ever happened to her. She slept in the doorway of a closed shop 3 blocks from Sunset Storage, waking every few hours to make sure the building was still there, that this wasn't all an elaborate dream. Sophia called the next evening from the road, somewhere in Kansas. She was driving straight through with a friend, stopping only for gas and coffee. They'd reach Chicago by morning. "I can't believe this is happening," Sophia said, her voice crackling through the payphone connection. "I've been alone for so long, Maya. After Mom died, I aged out of the system at 18, with nothing but the clothes I owned and a fierce determination to never be helpless again. I put myself through community college, got certified as a social worker. I spent years helping other people find their families, never thinking I'd find my own." "What was she like?" Maya asked. "Elena, I mean. I can barely remember our family from before." "Mom was..." Sophia's voice softened with memory. "She was the strongest person I ever knew. She worked 3 jobs sometimes, just to keep us fed and housed. But she never complained, not once. And she never gave up hope that we'd find you someday. She used to say that family was like a constellation. The stars might seem scattered, but they're all connected by invisible light." Maya closed her eyes, imagining Elena as a young mother, carrying hope for a lost niece even while battling her own struggles. She would have loved to know you made it, Sophia continued, that you survived everything they put you through. Mom always said the Rodriguez women were too stubborn to die easy. The next morning, Maya waited by the storage facility entrance, her heart hammering with each car that turned into the parking lot. She'd braided her hair and done her best to clean up in the gas station bathroom, but she was still obviously homeless. Too thin, too worn, clothes that had seen too many nights on unforgiving streets. A silver Honda pulled up just after 9 a.m., and Maya saw her own face looking back at her through the windshield. Sophia climbed out slowly, staring at Maya with the same mixture of wonder and disbelief that Maya felt. They were both older now, changed by years of hardship, but the family resemblance was undeniable. Maya? Sophia's voice was uncertain, hope and fear warring in her expression. Prima, Maya said, using the Spanish word for cousin that felt right in a way English never could. Sophia's face crumpled, and she crossed the distance between them in 3 quick steps, pulling Maya into a hug that felt like coming home. She was taller than Maya, broader through the shoulders, with calloused hands that spoke of hard work and determination. But her arms were gentle, protective in a way that made Maya's chest ache with longing for everything she'd lost. "Look at you," Sophia whispered, pulling back to study Maya's face. "You look so much like Mom did at your age. Same stubborn chin, same eyes that see too much." Maya laughed through her tears. "You look like the picture in your mother's trunk. Older, but wait until you see everything she saved," Sophia said, wiping her own eyes. "I brought my friend Carmen. She's a lawyer, helps me with cases at the shelter. We want to make sure everything is handled properly." Carmen turned out to be a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She shook Maya's hand firmly, studying her with the practiced gaze of someone who'd seen every kind of hard luck story. "Sophia's told me about the situation," Carmen said as they walked toward Unit 247. "What you did, finding Sophia instead of just taking the money, that says something about your character. Not everyone would have made that choice." Maya flushed, uncomfortable with the praise. "It wasn't mine to take." "Exactly," Carmen said. "Which is why I'm here to help figure out how to make sure everything gets handled legally. The good news is, there shouldn't be any issues with Sophia claiming her mother's property, especially with all the documentation you described." Maya unlocked the storage unit, and Sophia stepped inside with the reverence of someone entering a church. Her hands moved carefully over the boxes and covered furniture, touching each item like a sacred relic. "I remember this rocking chair," she said softly. "Mom used to rock me in it when I had nightmares. And these Christmas decorations, we put them up every year, even when we could barely afford food." But when Maya led her to the trunk, Sophia broke down completely. She knelt beside it like a pilgrim at a shrine, her fingers tracing the brass fittings with infinite care. "She told me about this trunk," Sophia whispered, said it was her treasure chest, where she kept everything important, but when she died, the social worker said there was nothing. "The account was set up to pay automatically," Carmen said, examining the bank statements. "No one would have known about it unless they specifically went looking. And Elena probably didn't tell anyone except Sophia about the arrangement." Sophia opened the trunk and gasped, just as Maya had. The money was still there, still carefully bundled, along with all the documents and photographs. But it was the letter addressed to the future Sophia that broke her completely. She read it in Spanish, her voice cracking as she translated portions for Maya and Carmen. Elena had written about her illness, about her fears for Sophia's future, about her dreams for the strong woman she knew her daughter would become. She'd saved every dollar possible, working herself to exhaustion to build this safety net. The letter ended with instructions to find Maya, to reconnect with the family that had been scattered by circumstances beyond their control. "She never stopped looking for you," Sophia said, showing Maya the letter. "Even while she was dying, she was trying to figure out how to find our family." Maya stared at the letter, her vision blurring with tears. All those years in foster care, moving from home to home, she'd felt completely alone in the world. But Elena had been thinking about her, planning for her, hoping for a reunion that she wouldn't live to see. "There's something else," Sophia said, digging deeper into the trunk. She pulled out a small wooden box, ornately carved with roses and birds. This was Abuela Rosa's jewelry box. Mom always said it would be mine someday, but I thought it was lost. Inside the box was a collection of simple but beautiful jewelry, a silver cross on a delicate chain, pearl earrings, a wedding ring worn smooth with age. But nestled in the center was something that made Maya gasp. "That's my necklace," she whispered, reaching for a thin gold chain with a tiny heart pendant. "I thought I'd lost it years ago, when I was moved from the group home." "Mom must have gotten it somehow," Sophia said. "She was always trying to track down pieces of our family history. She probably bought it from a pawn shop or found someone who had it." Maya fastened the necklace around her throat, feeling the weight of it like an anchor to her past. The heart pendant was tarnished but still beautiful, and wearing it made her feel connected to something larger than herself. Carmen worked efficiently, cataloging documents and taking photos for legal purposes. The money totaled just over $47,000, a fortune to two young women who'd spent years scraping by, but more than that, it represented Elena's love made tangible. "This changes everything," Sophia said, sinking into the old rocking chair. "Maya, this isn't just my inheritance. Mom's letter says to share everything with family, and you're the only family I have left." "But it's yours," Maya protested. "She saved it for you." "She saved it for us," Sophia corrected firmly. "For the family she hoped we'd become. And right now, you need it more than I do. I have a job, an apartment, a life. You have nothing but the clothes on your back." Maya wanted to argue, but the practical reality was undeniable. $47,000 could change her life completely, pay for an apartment, buy her time to finish high school, maybe even start college. It could lift her out of the endless cycle of survival that had consumed her for months. "What if we split it?" Maya suggested. "Half and half?" Sophia smiled, and Maya saw her own stubborn streak reflected in her cousin's expression. "How about this? You take what you need to get stable, finish school, get started in life. The rest goes in a savings account for emergencies, for both of us. We're family now, Maya. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine." Carmen nodded approvingly. "I can set up the accounts, make sure everything is properly documented. Sophia, you'll need to file some paperwork to officially claim the inheritance, but there shouldn't be any issues." They spent the rest of the day going through the storage unit methodically, sorting through decades of accumulated memories. Maya found photo albums full of family pictures she'd never seen, her grandmother as a young woman, relatives in Mexico she barely remembered, and dozens of photos of Elena and Sophia throughout the years. One picture stopped her cold. It showed Elena at what looked like a family gathering, holding a baby with dark hair and serious eyes. On the back, someone had written, "Elena and Maya, age 6 months. She loved you so much," Sophia said softly, looking over Maya's shoulder. "Even after you were taken into care, she never forgot about you. She used to say that someday, when things were better, she'd find a way to bring you home." "I wish I remembered her," Maya said, tracing Elena's face with her fingertip. "I wish I remembered any of them." "The memories will come back," Sophia promised. "Being with family, being safe, it helps unlock things your mind protected you from. And I can tell you stories, share the memories Mom passed down to me." As the sun began to set, they loaded Sophia's car with the most important items: documents, photos, and Elena's letters. The furniture would be donated to New Hope Shelter, Elena's final gift to people who needed a fresh start. But the trunk itself, Sophia decided, would come home with them. "Where is home?" Maya asked as they secured the trunk in the back seat. "For tonight, a hotel room," Sophia said. "Tomorrow we fly to Phoenix. You're coming back with me, Maya. No arguments. But I don't have ID for flying, or—" "Carmen's handling it," Sophia interrupted. "Emergency documentation for homeless minors. She's done it before." "And Maya?" She turned to face her cousin directly. "You're not homeless anymore. You're not alone anymore. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, you have a home now." Maya broke down, sobbing in the phone booth, months of suppressed emotion pouring out in great gasping waves. Through her tears, she managed to give Sophia the storage facility address and promised to check back the next day. "Maya," Sophia said softly, "I work at a homeless shelter here. I know how hard it is out there. But your nights on the street are over, okay? Whatever it takes, we're family now. Family doesn't let family face the world alone." That night in the hotel room, the first real bed Maya had slept in for months, she stared at the ceiling and tried to process everything that had changed. 12 hours ago, she'd been a street kid with no future and no family. Now she had both, handed to her by a twist of fate and a stranger's dropped key. Sophia had called ahead to Phoenix, arranging for Maya to stay in her spare bedroom while they figured out next steps. There would be paperwork, getting Maya enrolled in school, establishing legal guardianship since Maya was still a minor, setting up bank accounts, and getting her proper identification. Carmen had contacts in Phoenix who could help navigate the bureaucracy. It won't be easy, Sophia warned as they prepared for bed. There's a lot of red tape involved in extracting someone from the foster system. But Maya, I promise you this, you'll never sleep on the streets again. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, you have a home now. Maya touched the heart pendant at her throat, feeling its familiar weight. Why are you doing this? You don't really know me. I could be trouble. I could. You could be family, Sophia said simply, and family is worth any risk. The flight to Phoenix was Maya's first time on an airplane, a detail that seemed to delight Sophia. She pointed out landmarks as they flew over the southwest, telling Maya stories about the landscape below. As they descended toward Sky Harbor Airport, Maya saw the desert sprawling endlessly in all directions, mountains rising like purple shadows against the horizon. It's so different from Chicago, Maya said, pressing her face to the window. Wait until you see the sunset, Sophia promised. Mom used to say that God painted the Arizona sky every evening, just to remind people that beautiful things still existed in the world. Sophia's apartment was small but warm, filled with plants and painted in bright colors that spoke of someone who had fought hard for joy. She'd prepared the spare bedroom with care, clean sheets, a desk for studying, and photos of Elena prominently displayed on the dresser. "This is yours for as long as you want it," Sophia said, setting Maya's few possessions on the bed. "No conditions, no time limits. This is home." Maya sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the simple luxury of having her own space. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me," Sophia said, sitting beside her. "You gave me my mother's legacy, Maya. You could have kept that money and disappeared, but instead you found me. You brought our family back together. If anyone should be grateful, it's me." That evening, Sophia took Maya to New Hope Shelter for dinner. The building was nothing fancy, a converted warehouse with industrial lighting and mismatched furniture, but it hummed with life and purpose. Families sat around tables, sharing meals. Children played in a cordoned-off area, and volunteers moved efficiently between the kitchen and dining room. "Sophia!" a voice called out, and Maya turned to see a woman approaching with a huge smile. "You're back!" "How was Chicago?" "Life-changing," Sophia said, putting her arm around Maya's shoulders. "Maria, I'd like you to meet my cousin Maya, the one I told you about." Maria's eyes went wide. "The cousin you've been looking for? Oh, honey, welcome home." Maya found herself wrapped in another hug, this one smelling of industrial soap and genuine warmth. Maria was perhaps 60, with gray-streaked hair and laugh lines that spoke of someone who'd chosen joy despite seeing humanity's darkest corners. "Sophia's told us so much about you," Maria continued. "Well, about looking for you anyway. She never gave up hope that she'd find family someday." As the evening progressed, Maya met the rest of the New Hope team: social workers, counselors, volunteers, and formerly homeless clients who'd found stable housing and returned to help others. Everyone welcomed her with the easy acceptance of people who understood that family came in many forms. "This is what I do," Sophia explained as they helped clean up after dinner. "I work with kids aging out of foster care, people who've been homeless, families trying to get back on their feet. After everything I went through, I knew I wanted to help people who were facing the same struggles." Maya watched her cousin work, seeing the natural way she connected with clients, the respect in her colleagues, voices when they spoke about her. Sophia had taken her own pain and transformed it into purpose, built a life dedicated to healing the kinds of wounds they'd both carried. "I want to help too," Maya said suddenly. "When I finish school, I want to do what you do." Sophia's face lit up with pride. "You already are helping, Maya. Every person you meet who's been through what we've been through, they'll see you and know that survival is possible. That's not nothing. That's everything." Over the following weeks, Maya began to understand what Sophia meant. Enrolling in school was a complex process. Maya had missed months of her senior year, and her transcripts were scattered across multiple states. But the school district had experience with students in unusual circumstances, and Maya's obvious intelligence and determination worked in her favor. Carmen helped navigate the legal complexities of establishing Sophia as Maya's guardian, a process that involved paperwork, court hearings, and extensive background checks. But Sophia passed every evaluation with flying colors, her reputation in the social services community opening doors that might have remained closed for others. The money from Elena's inheritance was divided as they'd discussed, enough for Maya to establish independence with the remainder in savings for emergencies. Maya used her portion carefully, clothes that fit properly, school supplies, a used laptop for homework, and a small contribution to Sophia's household expenses despite her cousin's protests. "You don't pay rent to family," Sophia argued. "You don't get to have all the pride." Maya shot back. "I need to contribute something." It was Sophia who finally backed down, recognizing her own stubborn streak in Maya's expression. School proved both easier and harder than Maya had expected. Academically, she was behind in some subjects but ahead in others, her months of survival having taught her problem-solving skills that couldn't be learned from textbooks. Socially, she struggled to connect with classmates whose biggest concerns were prom dates and college applications. "They seem so young," Maya confided to Sophia one evening after a particularly frustrating day. "You grew up fast," Sophia said gently. "Maybe too fast. But Maya, you're still 17. You deserve to have some of those silly teenage concerns too." Maya wasn't sure she agreed, but she made an effort to engage with her classmates. She joined the school's volunteer club, finding common ground with other students who cared about social justice. Slowly, carefully, she began to build friendships based on shared values rather than shared struggles. The nightmares came sporadically, memories of cold nights and empty stomachs, the constant fear that had been her companion for so long. Sophia was always there during the difficult moments, offering comfort without judgment, understanding without needing explanation. "It takes time," Sophia said after a particularly bad night when Maya had woken up screaming about being chased through dark streets. "Your body and mind are learning to feel safe again. That's not something that happens overnight." "Do you still have nightmares?" Maya asked. "Sometimes," Sophia admitted. "Usually when I'm worried about a client or stressed about something else. But they're less frequent now, less intense. Having purpose helps. Having family helps more." Maya graduated in June, walking across the stage in a cap and gown that Sophia had insisted on buying brand new. In the audience, Maya saw not just Sophia but Maria and Carmen, along with half a dozen other people from New Hope who'd become her extended family. The applause when her name was called was deafening. "Elena would be so proud," Sophia whispered later, both of them crying too hard to speak clearly. Maya had been accepted to Arizona State University with a partial scholarship, planning to study social work like her cousin. But before starting college, she wanted to do something else, a pilgrimage of sorts to close the circle that had brought them together. They drove to Chicago together in July, retracing the journey Sophia had made months earlier. But this time, Maya wasn't running toward family. She was returning with them, strong enough now to face her past without being consumed by it. They visited the places where Maya had slept during those brutal months on the streets. The doorways and alcoves looked smaller now, less threatening. Maya stood in the spot where she'd first found Elena's key, remembering the desperate girl who'd huddled there in the rain. "She's still part of you," Sophia said, understanding Maya's contemplative silence. That girl who survived when everything was stacked against her. Don't forget her strength, but don't let her pain define you either. They also visited the soup kitchen, where Maya had gotten her only warm meals during those dark days. The silver-haired volunteer was still there, ladling out portions with the same gentle efficiency Maya remembered. When Maya introduced herself and explained her story, the woman's eyes filled with tears. "I remember you," she said, reaching across the serving counter to squeeze Maya's hands. "Thin as a rail, but you always said thank you, always smiled, even when you were clearly struggling. I used to pray for you after you stopped coming. I'm so glad my prayers were answered." "Thank you for seeing me as human when I felt invisible," Maya replied, her voice thick with emotion. "You probably don't realize how much those small kindnesses meant." The conversation reminded Maya of something Elena had written in her letter to Sophia, that kindness was never wasted, that even the smallest gesture could plant seeds of hope in the darkest circumstances. Maya made a mental note to remember that as she prepared to enter the helping professions herself. Their final stop was Sunset Storage, where the whole miraculous chain of events had begun. The unit was empty now, cleaned out and waiting for a new tenant. Maya stood in the doorway, remembering the moment she'd first laid eyes on Elena's trunk. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if that man hadn't dropped the key?" Sophia asked. Maya considered the question. "I think we would have found each other eventually." Elena's letter mentioned other family members, other searches she'd planned. Maybe it would have taken longer, but family has a way of calling to family. Mom always said that too, Sophia agreed. She believed in destiny, in the idea that love creates its own gravity. People who are meant to be together will always find a way. They drove back to Phoenix in comfortable silence, watching the landscape change from urban sprawl to desert vastness. Maya dozed against the passenger window, more at peace than she'd been since childhood. When she woke, they were pulling into Sophia's apartment complex as the sun painted the western sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. "There's your Arizona sunset," Sophia said softly. "What do you think?" Maya stepped out of the car and tilted her face toward the blazing horizon. The colors were more vivid than anything she'd ever seen, as if the sky itself was celebrating their homecoming. "I think Elena was right," she said finally. "God really does paint the sky here. It's like a daily reminder that beautiful things are always possible, even after the darkest storms." College proved to be another adjustment, but Maya approached it with the same determination that had carried her through homelessness. She threw herself into her studies, particularly drawn to classes on trauma-informed care and family preservation. Her professors quickly recognized her unique perspective, often calling on her to share insights from her lived experience. Maya also began volunteering at New Hope Shelter, working alongside Sophia with newly arrived clients. She had a particular gift for connecting with teenagers who'd aged out of foster care, young people who saw their own struggles reflected in her story. "You give them hope," Sophia observed after watching Maya spend an hour talking a suicidal 18-year-old off a metaphorical ledge. "They look at you and see proof that survival is possible, that their current circumstances don't have to define their future." "I just tell them the truth," Maya replied. "That rock bottom can be a foundation if you're strong enough to build on it." One evening in her sophomore year, Maya was studying in her apartment. She'd moved into her own place near campus, though she still had dinner with Sophia several times a week, when her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but something prompted her to answer. "Maya? This is Carmen. I have some news about the man who dropped Elena's key." Maya's pulse quickened. They'd never been able to track down the stranger whose carelessness had set everything in motion. "His name is David Chen," Carmen continued. "He's a private investigator who was hired by the storage company to track down owners of abandoned units. Elena's bank account had been empty for months, and they were preparing for auction. David had been given the key to photograph the contents for the auction catalog. So he wasn't connected to Elena or Sophia? Not directly, but here's the interesting part. David specializes in finding missing persons. When I told him the whole story, he was fascinated. He's offered to help us pro bono if we ever want to search for other family members." Maya thought about Elena's address book, still tucked away in the trunk that now sat in Sophia's living room. They'd made half-hearted attempts to contact some of the people listed, but many of the numbers were disconnected or the addresses outdated. "Maybe we should take him up on that," Maya said. "Elena spent so much time looking for family. Maybe we could finish what she started." 6 months later, Maya and Sophia found themselves on a plane to San Antonio, following leads that David had uncovered in his methodical search through public records and genealogy databases. Their grandmother Rosa had died 3 years earlier, but she'd left behind a large extended family that had scattered across Texas and Mexico. The reunion took place in a community center in San Antonio's west side, organized by a great-aunt Maya barely remembered from early childhood. As they walked into the room, Maya was struck by the sea of faces that echoed her own features, the same dark eyes, the same stubborn chin, the same mixture of strength and vulnerability that marked the Rodriguez line. "Mira," an elderly woman said, approaching them with tears streaming down her cheeks. "Elena's girls, together at last." Maya found herself passed from relative to relative, each offering pieces of family history she'd never known. There were stories about her parents, who died in a car accident when she was 6, details that had been lost in the shuffle of emergency placements and overwhelmed caseworkers. "We tried to find you," her great-aunt explained, "but the authorities said they were placing you with a family who could provide better opportunities. We were poor, mostly undocumented. They didn't think we were suitable." Maya felt a familiar anger rising in her chest, the same rage that had sustained her during the coldest nights on Chicago streets. But now it was tempered by understanding, by knowledge of how systems failed children every day, despite the best intentions of individual workers. "I'm here now," she said simply. "We're all here now." The weekend stretched into a celebration of survival and resilience. Maya learned traditional recipes from her great-aunt, heard family legends passed down through generations, and saw photos of relatives in Mexico who were planning their own pilgrimage north for a future reunion. Sophia fit seamlessly into the extended family, treated not as an in-law but as a daughter. Her work at the homeless shelter resonated particularly with the older women, who nodded knowingly when she talked about helping people who'd been forgotten by society. "This is what Elena wanted," Sophia said on their last night in San Antonio, as they sat on the porch of their great-aunt's house, watching cousins play in the front yard. She used to talk about how family was like a web. When one thread broke, the others had to stretch to fill the gap. But eventually, if you were patient enough, you could weave the broken pieces back together. Maya watched a little girl who looked remarkably like she had at that age, chasing fireflies with the same single-minded determination she brought to everything. The child's laughter rang out across the neighborhood, pure and joyful and completely unself-conscious. "I want to adopt someday," Maya said suddenly. "Kids who are aging out of foster care, teenagers that nobody else wants because they're too old or too damaged. I want to give them what you gave me, a place to belong." Sophia smiled, reaching over to squeeze Maya's hand. "Elena would love that." Breaking the cycle, turning pain into purpose. "Will you help me when the time comes?" "Try and stop me," Sophia replied. "We're family. Family doesn't let family face the world alone." 5 years later, Maya stood in a courthouse in Phoenix, her hand on Sophia's shoulder, as the judge finalized the adoption of Marcus, a 16-year-old who'd been bounced between group homes since he was 12. Marcus stood stiffly beside them, clearly uncomfortable with the formality, but unable to hide the hope in his eyes. Maya had graduated with honors from ASU, earning her master's degree in social work while continuing to volunteer at New Hope. She'd established a small nonprofit focused specifically on helping teenagers transition out of foster care, using Elena's inheritance as seed money and building it into a thriving organization that served hundreds of young people each year. The nonprofit was called Constellation Family Services, named for Elena's belief that family members were like stars, sometimes scattered by circumstances, but always connected by invisible light. Maya's staff included several young people who'd been through the program themselves, creating a cycle of healing and empowerment that rippled outward into the community. Marcus was her first adoption, but Maya knew he wouldn't be her last. There were too many kids like she'd been lost in the system, convinced they were unwanted, deserving of nothing more than survival. She was determined to prove them wrong, one child at a time. "How does it feel?" Sophia asked as they left the courthouse, Marcus walking between them with his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Like coming full circle," Maya replied. "Like Elena's plan is still unfolding, even all these years later." That evening, they celebrated at New Hope Shelter, where Marcus was welcomed into the extended family that had embraced Maya years before. Maria, now in her 70s but still volunteering twice a week, made her famous tres leches cake for the occasion. Carmen brought legal documents establishing college funds for both Maya and Marcus, insisting it was the least she could do for the most inspiring family I've ever worked with. As the party wound down, Maya found herself in the shelter's small chapel, a non-denominational space where people of all faiths came to find peace. Marcus had followed her, still wary but beginning to trust that this new family might actually stick around. "Are you religious?" he asked, settling into the pew beside her. "Not in any traditional sense," Maya replied, "but I believe in miracles. I believe that sometimes the universe conspires to put exactly the right people in exactly the right place at exactly the right moment. Like when you found that key?" "Like when I found that key," she agreed, "and like when Sophia found me, and like when we found you." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing this. "Do you think there are other kids out there? Other family members we haven't found yet?" Maya smiled, thinking of David Chen's ongoing searches, of the cousins in Mexico who sent regular letters, of the growing network of chosen family that surrounded them all. "I'm sure of it," she said. "But the beautiful thing about family is that it keeps growing. Every person we help, every life we touch, they become part of our constellation too. Elena started with just Sophia and dreams of finding me. Now look how many people are connected to her love." As they sat in the peaceful silence of the chapel, Maya felt Elena's presence as strongly as if her cousin's mother were sitting beside them. She thought about the letter Elena had written to the future Sophia, about the hope that had sustained a dying woman through her final weeks. Elena couldn't have imagined the full scope of what her careful planning would accomplish. She'd saved money hoping to secure Sophia's future, but that $47,000 had become the foundation for something much larger, a family business of healing that would touch thousands of lives. The key that had fallen from a stranger's pocket on a rainy Chicago morning had unlocked more than just a storage unit. It had unlocked the future Elena had dreamed of, where family found family and love multiplied instead of diminished by sharing. Maya reached into her purse and pulled out the wooden jewelry box that had belonged to her great-grandmother Rosa. Inside, nestled among the simple pieces Elena had saved, was the gold chain with the heart pendant, tarnished but unbroken, just like the family it represented. She fastened it around Marcus's neck, the way Sophia had done for her all those years ago. "This is yours now," she said quietly. "It's been passed down through our family for 3 generations. It represents love that survives separation, hope that outlasts despair, and the promise that you'll never be alone again." Marcus touched the pendant with careful fingers, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "What if I mess up? What if I'm too broken for this to work?" "Then we'll help you heal," Maya said simply. "That's what family does. We show up for each other, especially when it's hard, especially when it hurts." Outside the chapel, they could hear Sophia's laughter mixing with the voices of the New Hope community, their chosen family, their constellation of care. It was the sound of hope made audible, of love that had grown stronger by being shared. Maya stood up and extended her hand to Marcus, ready to lead him back into the warmth and light of belonging. The journey from that desperate night in Chicago seemed impossible now, like a story someone else had lived. But she could trace every step that had brought her here, from Elena's careful planning to a stranger's dropped key to Sophia's fierce determination to make family whole again. As they walked back toward the celebration, Maya thought about the letter she planned to write that night, addressed to the future Marcus and all the children who would come after him. She would tell them Elena's story and Sophia's story and her own story of survival against impossible odds. But most importantly, she would tell them that family was not about blood or law or circumstance. Family was about choice, the choice to love unconditionally, to forgive completely, and to believe that every person deserved a place to belong. The rain that had brought Maya and Elena's key together had long since ended, but the love it had set in motion would continue falling like gentle precipitation, nourishing new growth wherever it landed, for generations yet to come.